Welcome to Bad First Impression, the podcast about movies and where we meet them. I'm your host, Devin Warner, and every week, me and a guest go to a movie screening here in the city and discuss how the theater experience affected our impressions of the films. Return to the show is photographer and editor at large, my friend Bobby Martin, aka Bobby Taking Pictures. Bobby, how you doing?
The fact that the memories of this screening are flooding back into my mind, we're going downhill, and it'll probably keep going as the podcast goes on.
I know. I want to address this quickly. This is easily the longest time I have done between a record and a screening. Not that like we were just sat on it and didn't do anything about it. We've actually rescheduled this. I think maybe the third time we've rescheduled this.
Second or third.
I can't remember. We are of course discussing the seminal film Howard the Duck, which we saw at the Nighthawk Cinema 6-7 weeks ago.
I don't know. My memory has been trying to blank out this trauma, and it's been like work to efforts like keep it in there.
I think this is
until now.
Here's the thing. I'm not going to come back around and be like, this is a great or even really good movie. I think this is more of an interesting movie. And it has this reputation as this kind of unambiguously shitty movie. I don't think it's that bad. There's craft work in this movie.
I will say, I don't think I've ever said this about a film. I wish I had my time back.
Well, so on that subject, I want to bring this up. The night that we were going to go see Howard the Duck, and as a reminder to our viewers, most of the viewings that we go to, they're repertory screenings, meaning that they oftentimes only play once. So when I booked you for Howard the Duck, I was like, well, we have to go to this. We can't not go to it. The day it happened, I got an email telling me that I was chosen in a lottery to get free tickets to go see a 2 weeks early advanced screening of Dune Part 2 that I had to just say, thank you very much. Please give these to somebody else. In exchange for me to go see Howard the Duck.
You turned down Dune too early for Howard the Duck? I am so sorry.
At Walter Reed with Denis Villeneuve in person.
Oh.
Yeah, because I already had this booked and scheduled, and I don't like to cancel on people for that sort of thing.
No, knowing the history behind this film, the fact that it just keeps on like causing issues
and creating
for anyone like involved, it fits.
This movie is kind of like stuck in the craw of anybody who's had any association with it.
Yeah.
I think in terms of like context, how to talk about this thing, it's very interesting to note. This is the first feature-length theatrically released film based on a Marvel character.
Yeah, this is the first MCU movie.
This is canon within the MCU.
I mean, Howard the Duck is still in the MCU.
He is. Now he's voiced by Seth Green.
Yeah.
And like glad Seth Green is getting a paycheck, I guess.
I mean, he's still got the Family Guy stuff rolling. He does. I don't think he's doing bad.
He's one of those guys who's stealthily probably just one of the most obscenely wealthy people in Hollywood. I mean, because it's Austin Powers. Robot Chicken is probably streaming rights on that are probably pretty solid.
But I will say, if you've seen the last handful of projects he's tried to do on his own, like the last project,
he's trying to direct movies, right?
He did a couple TV shows. The last thing that I remember that was big was he was making a TV show based around, it was like a Roger Rabbit-esque where it's like animated stuff interacting with the real world based around his NFT chimp thing. And it did not go into production because his wallet got hacked and they stole it from him and sold it to someone for an absurd amount of money. And he does not have the funds to get his monkey back. And they can't go forward with the show because he no longer owns the copyright based on the stupid NFT laws.
I was actually we were recording this last time I was in. I was talking to our producer Connor about this exact thing, about how it feels like they have just kind of straight up fallen off. Like NFTs were announced as this big, huge thing. Jimmy Fallon's like, oh my God, I bought one. It's so great.
Yeah.
And he's fucking, telling Paris Hilton to go buy one or whatever. And then just radio silence, just nothing.
I have seen so many online videos about NFT scams and stuff. I know this has nothing to do with Howard the Duck, except for like the disastrous impact of big projects that have
a
so
negative
much
impact
potential
on society is what NFTs and Howard the Duck have in common.
Exactly. If Howard the Duck came out now, they would have had a line of NFTs that you could buy of like different eggs with like the duck beak on them.
This was weirdly at the height of NFTs, and then we'll get off NFTs after this point. If you like have the AMC app, you'll know like when you would go to buy tickets for a movie. I think this was around when the last Tom Holland Spider-Man. I know that the new Matrix movie had this. It would be like buy a ticket to this movie and you'll get an exclusive Matrix NFT. And I don't know. I actually like bought it within the window that I could be given it.
Yeah.
And it was like, go to this website and you can have it. I'm like, I really don't want to do that. I don't like, so somewhere out there, I guess I own an NFT that's unclaimed. But the thing about the Seth Green things, I actually, now that you said it, I remember the story. The reason why wasn't that he didn't have the funding. It's that because somebody hacked his wallet. By the rules of NFTs, he no longer had the right to make it because he didn't own the NFT anymore.
He based it all around this one character. And it also, I don't know, they showed off a preview somewhere.
Was it an ape?
It was an ape.
Okay.
It was one of those boring apes or some shit.
Bored ape.
Am I allowed to? I forgot. Can I curse?
Yeah. I've cursed.
Shit, fuck shit.
Come. Shit.
Oh!
Yeah, we're getting them all
We're getting
out there.
spicy.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure as we go into this film,
Well, this is for the reason that this movie, the tone is so confusing. I'm like literally at a loss for words trying to like categorize this thing, but they actually wanted this to be a family friendly movie. And a lot of the decisions that were made that resulted in the movie we have were to make it family friendly, which makes the final deeply horny product really fucking weird.
It is an extremely confusing film of tone. You have I agree. Like the audience, what demographic, who in a boardroom, because a boardroom was involved at Universal somewhere and they sat down and they were like, this is who we're targeting. And I can't for the life of me think what that group could have been. Because there's in the first 5 minutes, I recall seeing 3 separate pairs of duck titties.
Duck tits.
Yeah, not even from the same duck. Like they kept flashing back to like the same naked duck. It was 3 separate pairs of duck titties in the duck world.
Yes, we will. We'll get into the plot synopsis. And fortunately for you, that is literally the beginning of the plot synopsis. Basically, like titty, back to back.
Aww.
That's how it's like opening titles and titties. That's how the movie like gets rolling.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that here in a second. But I want to talk a little bit about why I decided to suggest this movie to you, to like pair it to you. I don't know if you have surmised any of this, but like honestly, the principal reason, one, is that this is a very puppety movie.
Yeah.
And you're like a Muppet man.
Yeah, I'm a Muppet of a man, or a very manly Muppet. It is for you at home to decide.
Yeah.
With hashtag Bobby a Muppet boy or
Muppet.
Bobby boy Muppet.
Muppet a Bobby boy?
Muppet a Bobby boy.
Hashtag Muppet a Bobby boy or hashtag Bobby a Muppet man. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So pick one of those 2 hashtags, send them out, and then we will
this will influence my life in some way, some small minor way that will be in my subconscious till the day I die.
We'll send it to Bobby and he'll just make of it what he makes of it. That's what we're committing to. If you pick one, we'll put out a poll.
Yeah, and then I'll spiral afterwards.
And then we'll just figure it out from there. That's the principal reason. And 2, that this movie has a couple connections to a comedian that I know you like a lot, which is Connor Ratliff.
Yeah.
Now, one,
I will also say, I thought this was also part of the reason I'm a huge comic book nerd as well.
You are, yeah.
So
that's the fucked up thing about this movie is I don't actually like the 10th thing I think about is I'm like, oh yeah, that's based off a comic book, isn't it?
It's I don't know. Do you know the origin of where Howard the Duck came from?
Didn't he start out in kind of the same way as like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did, where he was kind of like a grim and gritty, but like parody of darker stuff, right?
He was a sight gag.
Oh,
he was basically in the 70s. The Comic Code Authority had started lighting up their like how restricted they were on what could be in comics.
Yeah,
and because of that, birthed a whole bunch of kind of more like weird comic books to come out. And one of them from Marvel was this comic called Man-Thing, where it's basically this mindless monster in the swamp.
He's kind of like a Swamp Thing type thing. Yeah.
They both came out around the same time, which I don't know the exact of who came first. I don't want to get into that. The nerds coming after me, but Man-Thing was basically just like Swamp Thing had a brain. He was able to react. He was a person with thought. The whole thing about Man-Thing is he doesn't have thoughts. He doesn't have inner thoughts.
He's like basically not sentient. Right?
No, yeah. He just destroys stuff. And so in a way to make it more interesting, they had to surround him with like an interesting cast of characters. And for one of the issues, Howard the Duck's first appearance, where he's not even named, they just have a duck show up that they thought would be funny to have a foul-mouthed duck smoking, like almost like a Donald the Duck ripoff. They were like, this would just be funny.
I believe so, because I can't remember the name of who was the guy who made all the DuckTales comics, and I can't, the Scrooge McDuck comics. Do you know? I know. Is it Carl Barks?
Maybe it probably was.
I think that's who it is. It's either like Carl Barks or Karl Marx. It's one of those two, I believe.
Karl Marx.
Karl Marx is Scrooge McDuck comics. Honestly, the works of Karl Marx do have a lot in common with Scrooge McDuck.
That is fair.
It's a lot of commentary on like the corruption, the way that wealth corrupts people.
But also funny duck.
Yes, and there are a lot of funny ducks in the works of Karl Marx.
Yeah.
People don't actually know this, but people are saying this finally after all this time. The other connection is that this movie has a connection in that it was produced by George Lucas.
Yeah.
Who one of your favorite comedians, Connor Ratliff, plays regularly in a live show called the George Lucas Talk Show.
It is. I would highly recommend not only listening to the podcast, but if you could see Connor at any other performance, he's usually just around New York doing a bunch of stuff.
I have run into him. Like, I didn't like stop and say hi to him, but I have run into him at screenings already before. He's just he's like out at stuff.
Yeah, I feel like you could probably get him on this.
We should probably stop like doxing, saying here's this grocery store he goes to. Like, we should probably stop doing that. But I know that you like him a lot. He plays George Lucas. George Lucas plays a part in this movie. Also, another kind of connection. He has a very good podcast called Dead Eyes. And that he talks about a time that he was fired by Tom Hanks. And he, talking about other people who've experienced setbacks in their careers on an episode, had Leah Thompson on an episode.
Oh, really?
To talk about the weird kind of legacy of this movie, the black market put on her career. So this is a movie.
She was coming straight off of Back to the Future when she did this.
She was cast in this off the strength of Back to the Future. Similar to the hyper canceled Jeffrey Jones being cast in this movie based off the strength of his performance in Amadeus specifically, which is so funny to see a guy in Amadeus and go, bad guy in Howard the Duck.
Well, he was also just a bad guy in real life.
He was that was, I mean, I was watching a lot of like the kind of mid-period Tim Burton's recently. Yeah. And Jeffrey Jones is in basically all of those. And it's like watching someone who I know is that bad a person be that good an actor is pretty upsetting.
Yeah.
You're just like, fuck. He's absolutely got it. And also he's got a bunch of other bad stuff going on.
But it just makes sense he's able to do dark and creepy creatures. Yeah. Because that's just him.
It's like the Kevin Spacey thing. It's like, well, it's not a stretch.
Yeah.
Obviously this is parody. I have to say now because Kevin Spacey was found. Wasn't there a recent court ruling? I don't know. All of this is satire.
I have not been following the Kevin Spacey story, especially in recent time.
Yeah. You haven't been Frank? Do you know about the Let Me Be Frank videos?
I remember the first. Wasn't there like a first initial one that really blew up? Like I remember that, and I was like, I fuck him. I don't want to even know about it.
Once a year, he reprises his character from House of Cards.
It's been once a year since like that first time.
And he by the fireside sits and he gives a speech as his character. Anyway, back to Howard the Duck. No. We're going to do Duck Tits next. This is going to get easier. I promise this is going to get lighter and easier as we go on. So the movie opens with Duck Tits. I'm just kidding. It opens with credits. And then we see our hero, Howard the Duck, walk into his apartment. And I believe this is the sequence of events. He turns on his TV and there's porn on it.
Yes.
He, in front of the TV playing pornography with Duck Tits in it, opens up a duck hustler. There another pair of duck tits in it.
Yeah.
And then he is kind of unexplained at this point in the narrative, sucked up through like a wormhole or something in the sky, during which he cartoon style smashes through the walls of all the other units in his apartment. One of which there is a female duck showering. And you see her washing her duck tits with her human nipples on them.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre choice to prioritize getting that much duck horniness into the first 3 to 4 minutes of your movie.
And the fact that you have to think about like how much of the budget went towards these extra puppets.
They made a whole puppet of the woman in the shower.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing they did.
That wasn't something they were like, oh, let's just do it. And it was just like a quick throw in. No, that was something they had to put a whole ton of effort in. Someone had to sit down and sculpt duck titties that then got molded. And then they got put with like probably latex flowing through the mold to make it onto a puppet, then needed an animatronic frame to be built. One where you can put a bust of a duck on top of that and have it function as there was so much effort. And then it was probably operated by like 5 white dudes. Because at the time, a lot of the puppeteers were white men and they were controlling this just duck titties.
It's just, this is what I always say when I see like a bad decision in a movie. There are so many checks and balances. Every time you see, not a bad decision, because I understand how bad decisions are made. They're just kind of made by committee or somebody who's high enough up is convinced that that's going to be the right call. So, but when you see a really baffling decision like this is not just a bad one. This is a confusing one because I don't even understand any flawed logic that would lead to someone thinking this was a good idea.
Yeah.
So many systems of checks and balances are in place where even if no one is going to outright say no, they at least have the option to be like, do we want to maybe have an extra meeting about the duck boobs? I don't know. But that's the tone this movie starts with, is deeply, deeply horny. And it's got this kind of like ribald. It sets you in a mindset that it's like, oh, this is going to be like a Revenge of the Nerds style, like fucking Porky's, like constant jokes about nudity. And I will say the whole movie is not that horny. There are certain scenes, at least one of which I think we have to address.
We'll get to that. I can't mentally. We need to build up mentally to that.
Yes. It's just such a weird thing to prioritize. I don't understand what they're trying to do, especially considering, like I said, the goal with a lot of this movie was to make something more family friendly and accessible to children. I honestly, I can't imagine a responsible parent watching the first 5 minutes of this based off the expectations that 5 minutes would create and staying in the theater with your child. That's nuts to me. I can't imagine doing that.
I think just at the time of when this movie was coming out and before it, Howard the Duck had been immensely popular with comic fans. So much so that going back to when he was first introduced, they killed him off on his second appearance being there because one of the Marvel publishers just hated him. And that's the first time he got his name. The comic he gets his name is the comic that they like throw him off like the stairs to get home. And then there was such a backlash from that. The Marvel mailrooms, which used to be a much bigger thing in comic books where they would read fan mail constantly. It would be posted at the back of comics. The mailrooms went insane with being like, why the hell did you kill off Howard the Duck? He was in a couple issues and he was my favorite thing ever. So they decided to bring him back and drop him in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's just,
this movie takes place in Ohio.
It was just a weird, it's a sight gag that somehow the audience loves so much that they are the reason that Howard existed. And then there was a craze around him. They were expecting this movie. They could, in my understanding of looking into it, is the producers really thought they could not miss, that the character was kind of almost like bulletproof, that no matter what choices they made, people are like, that's Howard the Duck. That's what we're on top of. We're going to love it no matter what. And the Howard the Duck history before that is just insane. This movie's history is insane. But I think Universal mainly, I don't think Marvel had a lot of say in this because at the time they just really didn't have as much push and pull with stuff. Universal, I think, was really banking on this is going to be humongous. And we are going to put a bunch of input into this, but we could do a lot with this character and just people are still going to love it because it's like if Disney did a weird fucked up Mickey Mouse where really like no one had no idea what's going on.
It's got,
but they're banking on the iconography of like the character.
Yeah. His character design really belies, I think you're right. Like an attempt to make something that evokes the idea of a mascot like a Mickey Mouse, but then kind of perverts it a little bit. You know, I don't know. I don't really. it doesn't seem like that sharp a satire to me, like in concept.
I will say in the comics, it was a lot more kind of sharper and like smarter. Just because like he was not meant for a 3D medium like this.
No. Well,
especially at the time. The fact like originally the screenwriters who were making this version, because there was another version that started like was in pre-production before this movie. The screenwriters wanted to have this as an animated film. They were pushing heavily for animated.
And then
Universal came in and was like, no, we want live action.
I think because it was still seen as, still is seen as like a legitimizing factor for your film to be. It's funny, we'll have like, the Disney live action remakes are the worst offenders of this. They're like, it's live action. I'm like, that's an animated movie. I'm really sorry, but like, they're CGI lions. Like this, and I'm not saying that you should film. I don't know. Maybe that'd actually be a slightly interesting movie if they tried to corral real lions. Not that I want to suggest anybody doing that.
There is
some wildlife footage might have been more interesting.
No, there's a movie that someone made. Oh, God, I can't remember the name of it. It's like one of those infamous, like I think I don't know if it's slightly lost media, if there's only clips online, where someone filmed a whole movie with lions on a lion sanctuary, and it just went horribly wrong. I think like a couple like. Well, one of the sound guys almost got like mauled close to death. Like this is totally off topic. I'm not going to remember the name, but if you look it up.
How dare you get off topic on the Howard the Duck episode?
Well, now we're talking about the issues of studios
let's get back to the chronology
films.
of the Let Me Be Frank videos.
But no, there is a film like that where they tried to corral lions and it went so horribly wrong. And this was in like probably the 60s or 70s too. Yeah. And they were just shooting on like Super 8. And it just, I think the one person lost their life and another one I think got like deformed for life.
Oh my God.
And just, I will say, I want to preface with anything I say on this podcast. I re-listened to my last episode, The Blair Witch 2, and there was so much incorrect information I gave on that podcast that I listened to. I like double checked afterwards. I'm like, I was so wrong on that.
I truly hope nobody comes to this podcast looking for like facts and news.
Oh yeah, I know myself, and I have a way of saying stuff very confidently.
Yeah,
and being very wrong. So feel free to double check anything I say and be like, there's always a hint of truth, but usually it can be an overall misremembering.
Yeah. You heard it here first. Bobby is not accountable for the things he says.
Exactly.
That's exactly what you're saying.
This holds up in a court of law.
Yes. Parody? I don't know. I feel. Back to the plot summary of
the Howard the Duck comments were like almost like a sharp commentary, mainly on the comic community.
Yeah.
At first, and the writer was and the creator was a very strong-headed man, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I'm so bad with names.
For Howard the Duck.
Yeah, the original like creator of him was someone who the way he wrote was on the level of some of other like of the sharper comics that you think of from back in the day, like the She-Hulk comics.
I'm seeing Steve Gerber is the writer, and Vi Meyerink is the writer.
I think Gerber.
Yes, created by writer Steve. Yeah, so both are credited. Anyway,
he came up with it, and he I think had a great way of writing Howard the Duck.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a lot of contention with because I just want to get in the character's story because this goes into the movie of how sordid the character is. Because Marvel had a character that was a big hit and they did not know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. They had this creator who did not like following the rules because they got sued by Disney early on in the comics run because they're like, he looks too much like Donald the Duck that you have to change him. We're not saying get rid of it, but you need to because at the time when he was first created, he wore like a blue suit, yellow polka dot tie, and a little blue like hat.
Yeah, that they had to change like what he was wearing. Basically.
They originally they had to agree to putting pants on Howard the Duck. They had to change his eyes to be a bit more beady and less cartoony, and he had to have more like toe-like feet than webbed feet.
Yeah,
and basically what happened is Marvel's lawyers agreed to that, and then the writer was like, "Fuck that." He did one episode with pants. Where at the end, Howard like heroically rips off the pants and throws them behind and just kept drawing Howard how he wanted to. And eventually caught up to him. And there was a lot of other stuff going on with him and Marvel that eventually Marvel fired him. They fired him. The run was successful, but they fired him because they just didn't like working with him.
Yeah.
Then they tried to do their own run in like a black and white magazine, which was weird for such like a vibrant cartoony character.
Yeah.
Where they took, that's actually the black and white one is so like unregarded. People barely remember it. It was not written well because they just handed it off to some random writers. That is the first comic where Howard and Beverly, the scene that we're going to talk about later, is inspired from. And it's part of one of the worst runs of Howard at the time. And then he came back because he's a good writer. They had him try to keep on bringing back Howard the Duck, but they really did not know what to do with Howard the Duck. He was a popular character, but they were so afraid of like being experimental. Because right away, like at the time in the 70s, it was easy. That's when they had like more darker storylines. There's the famous Green Arrow and Green Lantern comic that came out around that time. That was like the start of like the change of the comic code, where Speedy is found to be doing speed.
Is that literally where he gets his name?
No, he was called Speedy already, but it's like
they just after the fact were like they heard about the drug speed and were like, oh, this is perfect. That's actually great. Let's do that.
The sidekick had not shown up in the comic for a while, and they're like, to reintroduce him, we're going to show that he's on drugs because Green Arrow cannot keep track of his sidekick. And that was like one of the, at the time and still now, is one of the most iconic storylines because it's like it gets weirdly dark out of nowhere for being a campy crossover comic between two different heroes that just have green in their name. And just so they were just able to get away with so much then that as time went on, they were like kind of tightening up the belt and the leash on stuff that Howard the Duck kind of fell in this like weird, obscure area. And they tried to do a different movie originally, which was going to be, Howard was going to be based very heavily on the design from the comics, and he was going to be a puppet in the way that Yoda was. And that was in pre-production. There's actually really cool designs of sketches and mock-ups of the original puppet. And then the original creator, who I don't think really had legal ground, sued Marvel to be like, I don't like how you're using my character. And this is while he was fired. He sued Marvel.
I mean, I guess what else has he got going on if he's fired?
He was working on other comic. He was working with other comic companies.
Yeah.
But he sued Marvel over Howard the Duck, and that put a pause in production on a different movie before the one that ended up coming out, as well as an animated TV show. And there's so many different Howard projects that could have happened, where if they did, Howard could be pretty much almost as big as like the X-Men right now.
It's
where it would be something like remembered as such a big part of like that time period.
There is so much infighting over the rights and the usage and the legality and what the appropriate tone for this character should be. And it's just nuts that all of that existed. And it was like so contentious for a character that for most people it really doesn't have a cultural footprint.
Yeah.
It's really nuts.
What my favorite part of the whole story is after the lawsuit got settled, Marvel liked still working with Gerber, and they wanted to play nice, so they had him come on and do a couple crossover issues of Howard the Duck with other characters, because Howard's still popular. They want to milk the Howard train. And one of the comics they did was a crossover with Howard the Duck and Spider-Man. And at the same time, Gerber was working on that. He was working on a different crossover comic for another company for, I think it was like Dynamite Duck, his own original character. And I forget, it's like Stegosaurus Cop or something. If you saw like an image of him, you might recognize it just from like,
sure.
It's like this green guy dressed as a cop who has like a dinosaur fin on his head. They were having their own crossover issue, and Marvel allowed Gerber to put like a little hint in the background of his Spider-Man comic of those two characters like showing up in the back of an explosion, like something small, minimal. But what Marvel didn't realize is what that crossover came out first, and then his other one with the independent company came out. And after that scene, they showed like their comic side of the scene of like Spider-Man and Howard in the background. And then he has the characters in his off-brand comic kidnap Howard the Duck and Beverly, take them into their comic world, and leave clones in the Marvel universe. So the writer physically wrote a canon way where he stole his characters. He dyed Howard the Duck's feathers, and then Beverly dyed her hair. and now they were in a whole different universe. And he literally like he pulled a heist on Marvel to steal the character
and
away.
they liked working with this guy enough to,
Yeah, and
because normally this is the sort
back.
of this is the sort of shit that like they'll just be like, we're just done with you, like you're a pain in the ass.
Nowadays, yes. At that time, comics were still like a niche. They weren't big. Like there was a more of a subsection than it being like widely popular. So they weren't going after like people that were doing this type of shit as heavily as they are like nowadays. Like if you try to get away with something like this now, like legal will be on your ass. You could just look at the new Invincible show.
Yeah.
They did everything they could to try to get a Spider-Man reference in without legal coming after them for having a Spider-Man reference in the last episode of this past season. Spoiler alert. It's not that much on the plot, but you'll see what I mean. But like the fact he did that, and Marvel really didn't notice and didn't care too much because they kept using the Howard character in their stuff. To this day, Howard, like they still don't know what to do with it. They've had multiple writers try to like have him be like a detective, a PI. He's run for president. He's done like so much stuff, but Marvel
this
has
really
no
just feels
clue
like they're
what to
just
do.
throwing random shit at the wall and be like, well, I hope this works. I don't like, they're not even doing it really purposefully.
Yeah, like now, I think the most recent Howard project that was Howard centric was there was almost a Hulu show
that got canned. I remember this. There was like a handful of, there was like a big Marvel retooling where there was one or two other like live action shows where I think around the time they were going in production on like the first Disney Plus shows. Yeah. They were just like, we're just canning everything.
Yeah, I think it was Cloak and Dagger and The Runaways.
There was something called Hellstrom, which might actually have even gotten like a pilot or a season out or something. I want to actually pull it back to the Howard the Duck movie. I think
now that we've established the character,
I think that it's very obvious we are avoiding talking about the movie itself.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do a plot rundown, but honestly, it's actually really simple. He gets sucked into our world. He makes friends with Beverly, played by Leah Thompson. And then they go to Tim Robbins, who works at just like a science lab.
Yeah.
And they find out that there is a laser there, that they have a certain amount of time. This is actually the first, like, you know how like most superhero movies have turned into like a giant portal in the sky is like the giant third act. This is kind of the original version of that, which is like, we have to like close the portal or something.
It's also the first one that's like, oh, multiple realities crashing on each other.
This is like kind of a multiverse movie years before that was hot. And it's very funny noticing like ways like that in which this movie kind of indicates where a lot of the genre has kind of ended up now.
Yeah.
And similarly for the fate of the movie Howard the Duck, it seems like a lot of Marvel stuff is kind of cratering on itself once it tries to incorporate this sort of thing. Because everything is very multiverse obsessed, which is so funny to me because multiverses are not really meant to be a like interesting storytelling concept. They're a way for companies who have decades, like in many cases, close to 100 years of storytelling to try and reconcile the things that work and get rid of the things that don't and have them exist within the same universe without having pedantic comic book fans coming at them and saying, well, this is a continuity error. This doesn't make sense. And now it has been reintroduced as like, this is like a bold new storytelling. And I'm like, this is just kind of annoying now. This just kind of seems like a way to get around things. And then that's basically what happens in the movie. I want to touch on, we've alluded to it. There's a scene in the middle where Howard the Duck is living at Leah Thompson's apartment while they like figure out, oh, can Tim Robbins help me? Oh, are there any scientists that can help me in or out? They're sitting there. She is wearing a like lingerie nightgown.
And before we get into it, I do want to say this doesn't. It does come out of nowhere. This scene we're about to talk to, but she is slightly flirting with him the entire film.
It's because
she starts giving him like pet names. She starts like kind of pulling at his feathers, like running her fingers through his hair. I think, but you're right. You see that in the movie before the scene that we're about to like go into here. But in all those times she's doing it, you're like, well, he is a puppet who doesn't look dissimilar in size and function to Yoda. Yeah. Like, so I'm not sexualizing him at all. Like he's just literally not a like sexual being. And I think why this scene is so
like kind of upsetting is that immediately it's almost an uncanny valley thing. You just see someone treating, it would be like if somebody just started sexualizing a lamp.
Yeah.
You know, it's just very bizarre to see. But she, like, I think basically on the whim of, wouldn't it be interesting? Let's just see if this like physically makes sense. And she like basically starts to initiate sex with him. Now, luckily, we're not subjected to this because I'll tell you what, this is the only time when you're about to have sex when you want Jeffrey Jones to burst into the room where you're in. This is basically the only time.
It was a
where
long
I was happy
scene
that
of
happened.
foreplay, though. Like,
Yeah.
it lasted forever of them just kind of throwing around innuendos and just making you
They
uncomfortable.
threw around innuendos, but it lasted around so long, and the innuendos became so. It's kind of like the you know, the joke towards the end of Austin Powers where when the guy falls in the shark pit and he stands there repeatedly making one-liners over and over again, and Elizabeth Hurley just slowly stops laughing at them and then just starts kind of politely not, you know the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where he's like, well, he'll never be the head of a major corporation. It's kind of like watching that. And after a while you realize, oh, wait, am I supposed to stop laughing at this and find this sexy?
Yeah.
Like, that's how long it goes on, because I'm like, well, they're clearly not even trying to be funny anymore. Are they trying to turn me on with this scene? It's really weird.
It's an extremely weird scene. And there's like other stuff that happens in the background.
You see like upskirt shots of her. Like, it's like, it's a pretty lusty scene.
Pretty much naked.
Yeah.
And they don't show like he has a blankets over his waist, but he is like duck naked compared to being in a full suit.
Is there ever a implication of a duck erection? Like,
there is. They pull out a duck condom. She's looking in his wallet when she first meets him, and she's going through it, and she puts out a duck condom.
It is so funny to me. I think that like, we're calling it duck condom, but because I think we don't remember like what the names are. I don't think, like, for example, when he opens the porn mag, it was called Duck Hustler.
No,
I think
it wasn't one
like,
that. It was literally a condom, and it was like miniature because it's the size for a duck's penis.
Yeah. I think that, like,
I don't think there was any. It was literally like a loose condom too.
Yeah.
I don't think it had a wrapper on it.
It's more the way that like everything there is more like, it's kind of like a BoJack Horseman style.
Yeah.
Like, everything has a pun around something related to ducks instead of just calling it the duck version of it.
Yeah.
This scene is like, it's just upsetting to look at. You like, not even necessarily because of what's being depicted, because it's not like, you're not actually witnessing anything explicitly like visceral.
Yeah.
You know, it's more just the ideas it's suggesting to you are so upsetting. And maybe even more so than the ideas themselves is the idea that somebody would conceive this scene and then think anybody would want to watch it. And yet, as I was saying, I think this is a bad movie. To be clear, I'm not going to like reclaim it as I'm like, oh, it's like, I think it's a bad but interesting movie. What's crazy is that, as we were talking about with the duck puppet at the beginning with the duck tits, so much effort is put into the craft of this thing.
Yeah.
It's actually a really impressive puppet.
It is also it's based on Hoggle, the way they did Hoggle for Labyrinth, for Jim Henson's Labyrinth, where it is like mainly a puppet, but it's like a suit puppet. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times there's someone in there, and then the head is fully like puppetized.
Yeah.
So they had one thing that also, I don't know like exactly which actor. They had two actors that were like the main actors for Howard. And one of them was a 12-year-old.
And I was reading into this. He basically like quit. Like, he was doing half the time and the other guy was doing half the time. And for reasons of both continuity errors and the fact that he's like, you cannot put me in a fucking duck suit at night shoots. I can't do it anymore. He was
getting burns on his face from the suit too, from all the mechanics inside.
Yeah, obviously.
Like, it was like torture. From what I haven't heard like an interview where he says it was torture, but from what I was hearing or reading about it, it seemed like torture to put this child through. And the fact that then it got to the editors, and the editors are like, yeah, you have a full-grown man and then a child playing the same actor, and we can't match up the movements because the childlike movements don't match with like the grown adult movement.
They're just different instincts.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you move your body differently, kind of based on how long you've had it to like be used to it.
And the fact the kid got cut out of most of the film because of that is kind of, it was a little upsetting to hear. And he probably was glad to not have to film anything more.
Honestly, yeah.
But they filmed a whole lot that they then had to reshoot with the other actor.
And the aftermath of this movie was kind of disastrous for anybody associated with it.
And well, maybe fortunately, but unfortunately, the way they marketed the movie was really detrimental. Would you mind looking up the name of the actor who ended up doing like Howard most of the time?
Howard is primarily done by, I think it's Ed Gale.
Ed Gale, yeah. He was treated so poorly.
No, Jordan Prentice. I'm sorry. I think Ed Gale was the child.
Yes.
Jordan Prentice is the primary like suit performer.
Yeah, and the way they decided to market the film, there are two things that they heavily did that I think was to the detriment of him. One was they did not show the Howard puppet in any of the marketing. Anytime there's a poster, anytime there's a trailer, they purposely cut around where you see the back of the head, you see the side,
and
maybe you see like the lower.
Oh, there's like, you're not going to believe what you see, sort of thing.
They wanted it to be like this big surprise. So that's also like crazy that the first, because if you think at the beginning of the movie, there's also a build up to seeing Howard as well. You see his like feet walk by, you see him walk by like a shoulder, because it's building up to also him being a duck.
Yeah.
But the first time people really see him is when he's sitting down watching duck porn. And for opening audiences, that's the first look anyone had really had of Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
And the second marketing thing was during the whole marketing campaign, they treated Howard as if he was a person.
Yeah.
Like he was the actor, Howard the Duck. Not like almost, they would like almost ignore anything about asking about people in the suit or anything, to the point where the actor, can you say the name again?
Jordan Prentice.
Jordan Prentice was barred from coming to the opening screening.
So that nobody would see.
Yeah, they wanted to keep up the illusion of Howard the Duck being an actual person, that he was barred from coming to the screening, and they did not give him credit in any interviews. They didn't talk about the work he did. They didn't even mention him at like the premiere as like a thank you or anything.
Yeah.
He was almost like dusted under the rug. And for the amount of effort,
I mean, that's
like he originally was just there for the stunts, which is crazy enough in like a suit like that. Then he had to come back and refilm everything, and just to get like zero credit afterwards is to me pretty appalling, especially for
I mean, anything where somebody is kind of denied credit for the thing they
especially
did.
a minority group in the film industry that is already having a tough time to fight their way through.
I think he was a little person, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. He might still be alive. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, he is.
Sorry,
Jordan.
It was just the poor treatment of just like that. There's so much in this movie that's like upsetting, and I could just watch the movie and be upset with my wasted time, and then you read more into it, and it's like,
I like the way you put it best. Just that I really wish I could have that 2 hours back.
Yeah.
To go do. I mean, I had a nice time hanging out with my friend.
Oh yeah, I loved hanging out with you.
It's not like I didn't enjoy going and seeing you, but I will say, like, the conversation we had in the lobby prior, I was like, this feels like, it is bizarre to come to see something this odd and this idiosyncratic and walk away and be like, as like interesting as it is, it feels inessential.
Yeah,
that makes sense, because there are a lot of things that I'm like, that's interesting, or it's kind of a unique thing, and I don't feel the need to go out of my way for it. I thought that Howard the Duck was the other kind of interesting, you know, where you're like, oh, okay, that's bad, but it's like very of its time, or it's like indicative of something that was going to happen.
I was actually because I had, being a big comic book fan, I like, and obviously with George Lucas podcast and everything else, like I have always been aware of the Howard the Duck movie. Yeah. This was my first time sitting down and watching
the whole thing. Yeah.
Like I had maybe seen like one or two clips here, but not enough to be like, to influence my say on the movie at all. Maybe I've seen a trailer once.
Sure.
So this was my full first experience with the film. And I just like, I was excited. I remember being excited going to it. I was in my duck fit, which I'm in right now. This is on purpose.
Yes, you are in your duck fit.
It is like 75 degrees out and I'm sweating, but I made sure I had to wear my duck outfit.
It's nuts. Like, it's like we're like enjoying, that's the enduring like infliction that this movie has on you, that we watched this movie like 7 weeks ago, and still it's like making you hot on one of the first nice days in New York.
The last time we tried to record, I got extremely ill.
Yes.
Like this thing has just been like torturing me.
So that being said, no, I don't recommend this. We don't usually do like a thumbs up or thumbs down. This is one that I felt I walked out and I was like, this is so. It's not like there's nothing to talk about, but there's almost nothing of like real merit to say about this thing other than I think it being forgotten is kind of the right call.
It's the right call, but there's so many weird things that kind of just like came from this. Like one of the biggest things that I found most interesting about like what happened after this is Robin Williams.
Yeah,
Williams
he did a week of voice work and quit. Because he's like, it's bullshit.
Well, not just that. There's a story from one of the puppeteers where basically it was Robin's one of his first days on set. And he was showing off the puppet, like how it works. And there's a little microphone to talk through. And Robin's voice for Howard the Duck was very similar to what the puppeteer's voice actually was, which the director had not heard yet.
Yeah.
And so Robin was like fucking around with the puppet and he starts doing the voice through the thing, and all of a sudden, this is the story from the puppeteer.
Sure.
So who knows if this is substantiated or not? Supposedly the director started fucking screaming at him from the other side, being like, "What the fuck are you doing? I told you don't fucking talk over the microphone. You're fucking like you're there to fucking move the puppet, and that's fucking all you need to do."
Oh God.
And he had to get on the mic and go, "Actually, Robin was just testing out the puppet. That was Robin doing it."
Oh God.
And the guy went, "Oh, Robin, that was sounding good. That was sounding good. Sorry, just a lot going on over here." And Robin turned to the puppeteer. He's like, "Is this like this all the time?" And the puppeteer turned to him and is like, "Actually, this was one of the good days."
Oh my God.
And after that, Robin, I think the quote that the puppeteer said is Robin said to him, "Life's too short to work with men like him."
Yeah.
And there's only like one or two interviews where like this story's been told, but that I believe was also tying back to what we're talking about was during the bedroom scene too.
Yeah.
While they were filming that.
Oh, they're just screaming at them the whole time.
Well, no, like when that whole situation with Robin Williams happened was when they were recording the bedroom scene. So that's just another layer to that being weird. And then because he left the project, he was able to do Good Morning Vietnam.
Well, on that note, we're at about time. I think that's the note we have to leave it on, honestly, because we got to head out of the studio. I do want to, before I leave. Sorry. No, the set sounds super chill. I would love to hang out there with that guy. I'm not like super in love with Good Morning Vietnam, but it's hard to argue that that's not a better usage of his time.
That film helped launch him as a film actor.
Yes. And I'm glad we have the career of Robin Williams instead of him as a voice role in Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Bobby, I assume you know what my final discussion question always is, but I'll say it again for the audience listening/watching at home or, in a car or train, like most people listen to podcasts. What personal to you, obscure movie that's unlikely to screen that if, Hoping Against Hope is screening somewhere that we absolutely got to drop everything and go see, what movie is that for you?
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you to this because I want this to happen. I want us to talk about this.
Yeah, okay.
I will have you personally over to my apartment and we will watch this and we will have some maybe enhancements to help get it going. But we are going to sit down and we're going to watch Peter Jackson's 1989 classic, Meet the Feebles.
Oh my God, I would love to talk about Meet the Feebles.
I think this really connects to, I've been wanting to watch it with you forever. I actually, Sebastian Maroon just did a double feature with me on a couple days ago where we took edibles. We watched Psycho Goreman, which is also a crazy B horror film with puppets and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then did Meet the Feebles right afterwards. And he has not stopped talking about it. He loved it. It's an experience. It's one of the reasons, one of the big reasons Peter Jackson ended up getting the Lord of the Rings gig is the way he was able to work with puppets on that.
Yeah.
And it is just an insane film that I want to show everyone in my life, but especially I want to talk about it here.
Meet the Feebles. Yeah, I would love to. His early horror stuff to me is like, I like the Lord of the Rings a lot.
Yeah.
his early horror stuff to me is like almost a way more interesting.
This is
part
not
of his
even
career.
horror. This is just a full-on parody of the Muppet Show. It's about a Muppet or a puppet variety show.
I'm sorry. You know what? I might be mixing up with Dead Alive. I think
Yeah, that's the one he did
Yeah.
right beforehand, and it has a lot of similar cast overlap
Yeah.
because it's pretty much just him and I think 6 or 7 friends doing like the entire cast. But that we're gonna sit down. The only time I've seen a screening in the past like decade in New York was there was one weirdly enough last year in Long Island in the summer, and I don't think we will ever see another screening. But the whole thing's on YouTube. Everyone watch it before we do that episode.
Yes, we saw they played the Frighteners at Nighthawk like sometime last year, so it's not like that sort of thing doesn't have an interest.
Yeah,
but we'll put a pin in that. We'll come back to early Peter. That's a great pick. I would love to do that. Bobby, do you have anything to plug?
Yes. So I'm currently unemployed like a lot of people right now. So if you need an editor, post-production person, content manager, I am your man. I also do Magic the Gathering proxy art.
Yeah, so you had a pretty fun commission recently.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a commission, it was actually a gift. I had the fortunate luck to get in the hands or work with Joe Manganiello.
Yes.
And right now he is hosting, if you don't know just based off name, he is Magic Mike. He is Flash Thompson in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He was Deathstroke in Zack Snyder's Justice League.
He had a really great like 2 or 3 episode arc where he played himself on Mythic Quest not long ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the big things he's doing right now is he's the host of Deal or No Deal Island, which I also recommend watching because it's one of the weirdest reality shows I've seen in recent time. I was able to work with him. I got a custom card custom artwork I made for a card that I got into his hands. He put it up on social media. People thought it was marketing from NBC, which was real fun.
Yeah.
NBC, if you need someone in your marketing department, please. I need health insurance. I'm almost 26. And it kind of blew up. There's some backlash from people being like, why would the marketing team do this?
Yeah.
People that realized it was art was like, this is great. I love this.
It's really cool because it was like featured on like NBC's main page and everything, right? Or their social media.
They were tagged on it, but he posted all over his social media. A couple other big Magic people.
Yeah, I've been sending it to like my Magic friends and my D&D friends. So you know. Because commissions are open, right?
They are not.
They're not? Okay.
They are not.
We'll strike that from the record.
Yeah. We'll go back a second. So I do. Nothing was cut. Don't worry about that weird jump.
About it. Yeah.
I do post renders on Nerd of the Coast on Instagram and TikTok. You could see some of my work on different threads on Reddit. I share a lot of the renders and I share my process. So if you want to make your own cards, very easy to do. I'm always happy if you reach out to talk to you.
Social media handles for anybody.
Yeah, Nerd of the Coast.
Oh, okay.
And then,
I mean for you.
Oh, and then I'm Bob Marr 1998. I take pictures too. So if you want to see a little bit of that, but I'm not a photographer. I just like taking pictures. Yeah. I'm also Devin's friend.
Yeah, we're plugging our friendship here at the end of the show. With that being said, this has been Bad First Impression. You can find us on all socials at BFI Pod. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Letterboxd. I'm trying to keep more up to date lately. We have a subreddit going, just /BFI Pod, where I post stuff and we can talk about that sort of thing. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can send them to me, to BFI Pod on any of the socials, or also you can mail us at mailbag@bfipod.com, and you can find me on social medias at WhatIfDevin. I want to thank Lily Steinberg for her help with social media and with promotional images. I want to thank Kristen Ng for our logo artwork, and to take us out, there aren't a lot of memorable quotes from this movie.
I was just
saying, you got one? Okay,
I was just gonna say, fuck Howard the Duck.
Until next time, fuck you, Howard the Duck. All right, bye, y'all. Yeah.